3 Arnold Terrace. Mr. Yu, he would like to cut some pine trees. Hi, how are you tonight?
Very good. Thank you for letting me speak here. So last time we were...
So you ought to introduce yourself for the record, so we have it on tape.
Sure. My name is Chi-Cheng Yu. I am the owner of 3 Arnold Terrace.
Sure.
So basically, I've been living there for almost 3 years now.
Right, okay. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah. So last time we were talking about my request to trim the 5 pine trees in the backyard. The suggestion from the committee is to find out, number one, whether or not the trees will survive after the proposed trim. Number two is, would there be any alternative ways of handling the trees? I mean, the main one on that front would be to cable the trees. So I did talk to a tree company, as actually it was suggested by Eileen, would be the Marquis Tree Company. I guess it's a well-known company. The person, the gentleman who came over is not an arborist, but according to the company, he's very well-known, well-versed in terms of determining what will happen to the trees. So what he told me is that the proposed amount of cut to the 5 pine trees will probably kill them. So basically what I propose is about between about one fourth from the top. And what he told me is that the amount of safe trimming will be about only 6 feet from the top. So obviously 6 feet is not going to help stabilize the trees, prevent them from falling. I mean, without further consulting arborist, I guess I will agree, or you guys will also agree that my original plan is probably going to kill the trees. So eventually, if we go that way, the consequences of how to deal with the dead trees. Basically, what I asked him over to, the main purpose is to evaluate the proposal of cabling the trees. I mean, once you mentioned, I think it's a better, superior method of dealing with it. But he balked at the proposal. Basically, he is worried about the liability. He said, okay, I could cable them together, but what if 2 of them fall together? So he said, okay, once I do that, the liability is on me. I don't want to deal with that. So eventually he just said, no, I'm not going to do it for you. So I'm still talking to other companies about that, but so far I haven't gotten any positive response. So it looks like that so far it's not viable. So on that front, I mean, basically what's left to me possible is, the committee also mentioned last time was to cut the trees. So today, I guess my main proposal or request would be for the committee to consider that option. Like I said in my original proposal, I am open to whatever is need to be done to compensate the fact that the trees are gone. But before I go further on that, I would like to say that at this moment, what I have heard from whoever I talked to, actually before this request, last time I had some trimming of the trees. I also talked to the company about the cost. Cutting down the 5 pine trees is very expensive. I mean, the quote I got from Marquis is $12,000. So I definitely will not be able to afford that at this time. So essentially, my request here is for the committee's approval for me to have the option still available. If I later on either find a tree company who can do this at a cheaper rate, or I can do it in steps, then I can proceed. So the nature of this request is, even if you approve, I may not be able to do it, but I will try to. So that's where I am right now. So on the nature of why I'm still going that direction is that the trees are, I mean, you may ask, why are these trees different from any other trees? So there are two major factors that makes them different from the other ones. Number one is they were surrounded by very strong trees before I bought the property. So both in the front and on the side, which is the lot of my neighbor in 5 Arnold, there are many tall and strong trees surrounding them, giving them protection. So these trees are grown in a way that they want to go up and they want to get the sun or whatever. So the top is heavy, but it's very thin, and assuming that they will not get a lot of wind forces on the side. So that's one thing makes these trees different from any other pine trees. The other option is actually, the other factor is, ironically, the fact that it's near the wetland. So if you have been there recently, you can see there are standing waters in my backyards. I mean, especially on the steps, above the steps. The Marquis Tree Company person who told me that if the trees fall, it would fall when there's a lot of flooding and there's a lot of standing water. Basically, the soil becomes soaked with water, so they don't hold the root as well. But that obviously, I'm not saying it's happening right now, but I'm saying my backyard is definitely worse than any typical backyard in terms of what's holding the trees up. And he also suggests that usually if it falls, it may not be uprooted, it may be snapping, but if it does fall completely, it will because the water is losing the roots. So that's where my main concern still remains. That's why I'm still putting up this request. Like one of you mentioned that one of the 5 trees definitely either on the wetland or very close to the wetland. But again, ironically, that actually makes that tree more likely to fall. So that's where I am right now. So my request is still respectfully to the committee that give me the permission to cut the trees. Whether or not it's going to happen, I will try to find a opportunity that I can afford to do that, and or maybe in batches or in one by one, and then later on compensate for the loss of the trees by new, maybe planting new trees. So that's why thank you.
Okay, maybe we need a little discussion. There's 2 issues. One is he's seeking approval now to cut trees, and the alternative is to keep the request open and for a while until he comes up with a plan, obviously. One of the issues will be, for the commission to consider, will be replacement, if we were to be inclined to do this, and what would it be replaced with? So why don't we go to John? John, do you have any comments on this?
Well, so I didn't go to the site visit because I was on vacation, so I wasn't out there with you, and so I didn't view the trees. I'm certainly very familiar with the site, and I will say that the area beyond the wetlands, as you remember when they were building that house, is very wet, even beyond the wetlands. So below the wall is there's a really high water table. So, I mean, those trees are probably, their roots are probably very, I mean, white pines have shallow roots anyway, but they're growing in an area with a very high water table. So, you know, I'd probably be nervous if I had pines growing in such a wet area close to the house.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about what we saw when we were out there, because you weren't there.
Correct.
What we saw was some very tall, thin trees, only with vegetation at the top, evergreens. They were taller than anything else, rising above the understory. There were a number of, I think they were, correct me if I'm wrong, hardwood trees that were smaller in a lower story level, so to speak. In other words, and they were probably stunted because they're not getting much sun, okay? You could envision a situation where those pine trees would come down and not come down, but they could be taken down, and the other hardwoods would begin to flourish and actually begin to fill out. Anybody can stop me if I'm going astray here. So there might be an incentive there might be not a lot of problems with taking them down. The only question is, you'd have to go out and the commission would ask for your opinion on what to do about replacement and if it's required. Now, the other side of that coin is that there's a lot of understory trees that are probably better quality trees with deeper roots. And collectively, they all take up water. And you have a lot of water underground, on the surface and underground, coming down into your backyard, where the commission is very familiar with that site. The thing I would be thinking of is there any kind of vegetation, tree or something that has a reputation for taking up lots of water? That might be an advantage to actually put that in your yard to help take up some of the water. I don't know if there is, I can't quote it at this point, but you might want to look into that.
So you're talking about replacement.
Well, I'm just saying to deal with, as a separate issue, dealing with the water in your yard. Your yard is full of water,
Yes.
and it gets a lot of groundwater and surface water. Is there anything you could plant that would help take up some of that water and maybe keep it dry, drier than it otherwise would?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, you can look into that.
Yep.
Maybe these folks can make some suggestions for you to look at. So, anybody else have an opinion on this, on the right?
I don't know if the arborist would be able to help them. That was our first reaction in the last meeting.
Well, that was whether they would survive, and I think he has that information that they won't survive. That was the reason for getting the arborist. And the commission's first reaction is those trees would not survive if you cut all the vegetation off the top, the first 25%. How about on the left? Anybody else have a comment?
I agree with you that the retention of water in the trees is going to help you with your water situation. The more broad leaves you have on a tree, the more respiration that tree does, the more water is being taken out of the ground and breathed into the air. So some good, healthy, broadleaf trees, like some of the ones you have outside of the pines, is going to help, and I think it would be to your benefit. And we usually do require or request some plantings in lieu of the ones that are taken down. I don't have a problem with approving taking down the bulk of the trees, because they're all outside of the well outside the 20-foot no disturb, they're beyond the 40-foot no build zone. So I wouldn't have a problem with them coming down. I don't think they have much value to the property the way they, as you so well described, they're so long and skinny with nothing, and then just a tuft at the top because of what used to be surrounding trees. So that's the way I feel.
Well, unless someone else has something to say, wouldn't it, Eileen, you were there, wouldn't it make more sense to leave this open, have you and John take a look and decide whether we need a plan for whatever to do about replanting? Would that make more sense? And then we come back, we have,
I would suggest that we propose some number, and then we could confer with them.
propose some number what?
Number of replacement trees?
Me now?
Yep,
If they're taken down.
if they're taken down, yeah.
We could do that. We could say up to, what? What would you recommend, 1 for 1? Or 2 to 1?
Yeah.
Okay, up to 2 to 1, notwithstanding, use that as a maximum, and you could modify that at your discretion. How does that sound?
Yep.
Does that sound like how does that sound to you? What
That
has
sounds
been
very-
suggested, that we authorize that you must replace them up to a maximum of 2 for 1 for every one you take down, that there'll be 2 plantings for every one you cut down, but that may be modified upon their site visit. You can talk
Oh,
to
the
them.
minimum, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. Yeah.
I would highly suggest getting another estimate.
Getting what?
get another estimate.
Right.
I think part of the issue might be that it's not really accessible with heavy equipment, to get in there with
That
a
is,
cherry
that
picker
is
or anything
true.
is
So-
impossible.
So actually,
It's gonna be hand done.
Marquis told me that the three of them can be accessed with equipment. I was very surprised, because before that, last year I was talking to another tree company, actually two tree companies. They both told me that they are not accessible by hybrid equipment. That's why it's so expensive.
Right.
Until 5 trees add up to
Right.
$12,000.
Are you looking to have the trees removed from the property?
So I am, so there are two options. One is to remove everything. Another is to remove all basically the branches, the leaves, but leave the heaviest part of the trunk cut up and on the property.
What does the commission have any comment on that?
You mean, you mean leave the log or just
Yeah.
chop it? You mean kind of cut it,
It's cutting to
To-
small pieces.
You don't wanna leave that in the
It's not really small, basically maybe this big kind of pieces, and leave basically they come from the trunk on the property, but all the leaves and the branches will be taken away.
Does the commission have an opinion one way or the other on that?
you don't want that in the wetland, do you?
What would you do with them?
Yeah,
You mean what's left there?
yeah.
Nothing. This is basically trying to reduce cost. I mean,
Okay.
if I were rather,
It's fine if the tree fell on its own. I mean, near a wetland, we'd tell them to leave it there, so.
like the chairman said, if the heavy equipment cannot reach, hauling them off the property manually is very costly.
Right, right.
The other option would be to leave the lower 10-foot or so standing and let it decay on its own, and the
Well,
birds
even
could come and,
I appreciate that very much. I will definitely, yeah, if I'm getting that permission, I will definitely do that. So the original proposal, I have that in the back of my mind. So I have the top 25% off, even if the rest dies, it's gonna die slowly, and I can take care of them years later, not immediately. So that's how I spread out the cost. So if you can tell me that I can leave 10 feet or 15 feet, that would definitely help me. I'm not sure.
We actually ask for that all the time, because it's called a snag, and it provides a lot of wildlife habitat. Most people don't want to, because they think it's ugly. So if you think it's good, we're happy.
it's good for the wildlife.
The affordability is number one. So,
Right.
I mean, I'd rather it to be beautiful, but
Leaving the top, the bottom 15
not
feet
ugly, I
would be
have-
okay with us, right?
It's
Absolutely.
not ugly, I have them in my yard.
Yeah.
Birds like to perch
I'm
on them,
definitely-
woodpeckers, it's nice.
okay with that for safety.
All right, so okay. So we have a draft decision. Is this decision okay? Should we review it and then
Actually, we have an updated one, so.
have an updated one?
Well, I just made some changes right now as we were talking, as you were
All right,
talking.
okay.
Well, why don't, you can just verbalize it as we go.
Okay. Do we have an extra one for? Do we have one for tree chair? Oh.
So just before you do this, so this decision is only good for 3 years, so if you don't take the trees down in 3 years, you would have to go through this process again.
I understood that. Actually, Eileen told me, and that's why I want to keep this open today. Otherwise, I would have closed it like I talked about earlier, say I would just withdraw everything. But because I paid that legal advertising fee and the fee for this hearing, I'm glad I have this 3-year opportunity to go forward with it.
Right, okay. Please,
Okay,
let's go through
so
it.
we're going to amend it slightly to say that the project description is the applicant proposed to cut 5 trees. The closest tree proposed to be cut was approximately 10 feet from the BBW. Then under conditions, this decision is for work as outlined in the project description. No other work was reviewed or permitted by this decision. Prior to commencing any work beyond that permitted in this decision, the applicant shall contact the Conservation Department in order to determine whether or not a new filing will be required. And for number 2, I was proposing we just change it to say applicant may proceed with tree removal If removal of any other trees beyond those permitted by this decision is recommended, this will require additional approval from the Conservation Commission or Conservation Administrator and may require submission of a written assessment by a certified arborist that they pose a hazard or are in significant decline. For tree trimmings or removals that are not feasible to do by hand, machinery such as a bucket truck or crane shall be located in existing lawn areas. If trees are removed, the stumps of the trees beyond the retaining wall shall not be removed without additional approval from the Commission or Conservation Administrator. The applicant is encouraged to leave snags, a portion of the trunk, where feasible for wildlife habitat. And I would suggest number 5 be changed to something like, the applicant shall plant trees at a ratio of up to 2:1 for the removed trees. Trees shall be native with the specific species approved by the Conservation Administrator. And then some standard conditions about any debris or sediment or lawn clippings. They shall not be dumped in the vegetated wetlands, and if they get in there, they should be removed by hand. Pesticides, herbicides, fungicides should not be used within the wetlands or within 100 feet of the wetlands. Members of the Conservation Commission or their representatives may have the right to enter upon and inspect the premises to evaluate compliance. And any non-compliance with these conditions shall be deemed a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw.
Do you want to say anything about the 15-foot snags, authorized to leave 15-foot snags?
Do you want to specify the height?
This is encouraged.
The
Yeah,
word
well, so-
snag mean a long stem.
Yes.
I mean, a long-
So condition
long
4
stump.
mentions the snags. I mean,
Does
it
it?
doesn't say a height, but
I mean, I think that's up to,
Yeah.
you know, and.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, he'll come to an agreement with you folks anyway. Okay.
Would there be any objection or, I mean, hazard in your view that if it's above 15 feet?
no.
Oh, no. I mean, ideally, in a real world, that full tree would survive its full life and fall as one piece. So if you want to cut off any portion of the top,
Okay, so,
leave whatever you want to leave.
Sounds like
As
what
long as
I'm
you're
hearing.
comfortable, it's not going to fall on your house at that point.
sounds like, if I understand it right, is I have the permission to cut off half of the tree.
Or more, whatever
Well,
it is. you
that
know.
would mean it's dying and you have to replace it.
Yes,
So the
that's
tree,
given.
you're killing the tree, you're just leaving
Right.
half the trunk.
Right.
Right.
If you want to do that, that's fine.
That's still a snag, and we
That-
don't
that-
care how much snag you leave.
That definitely helps in terms of how much I need to pay. Yeah.
Okay, is there any further changes? If nothing, could I have a motion to issue a negative conditional determination for the project at 3 Arnold Terrace under Burlington Bylaw, Article 14 in the State Wetlands Protection Act? Second?
Second.
All in favor? 600. One more thing. I used a tree cutter who does it by climbing up the tree easily. He works with 2 other guys usually, and he climbs trees, and I had a couple of trees cut the way you're talking. And I'll see if I can find the number, and I'll give it to the office, and you can contact the office, or they can get in touch with you.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Appreciate that. So, let me just make sure I understand. Basically, it has been approved, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, because at the
But you
beginning-
need to talk to the office and have them come out
Right,
and talk about replacement,
Yeah.
what's required,
If he cuts.
if you cut.
yes. So that conversation can happen when I determine I will proceed?
Yep.
It doesn't have to happen right now?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All righty, thank you.
I'm all set, right?
Yes.
We're all
You'll
set.
actually get a decision in the mail next week,
That was just the draft.
just a draft,
I
right?
appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
Thank you,
right.
Mr. Yu.
Good night.
Thank you, good to see you, have a good night.
Yeah.
You were extremely articulate and very clear. It was a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
All right, so, next on the agenda is request for a certificate of compliance, 28 Alma. Good evening.
No, I made it.
All right, so we were out at the site, so you probably want to introduce yourself for the record and the fact that you live at 28 Alma, and then we'll talk about the status.
I unfortunately do not live at 28 Alma, but I'm Rebecca Bashad. I'm a landscape architect representing the McKinnon family today.
Okay, so you don't live there?
I don't live there, I'm from it, but they're good colleagues of ours, and I did the notice of intent for the project so they could expand the swimming pool in-house or add the swimming pool. And I understand you were out there I do apologize. I think we're caught off guard that I wrote the letter on March 26th, that we're already here. So the McKinnons didn't finish cleaning out some of the scrap material from the fence removal. I know the dumpster was just removed to the front yard. I didn't even include in the letter. Will be resodded. They've got the landscaper scheduled to come and finish cleanup and do that repair. So I know you were out on site this week and had some comments, and happy to hear them, but they are totally willing to respond to
Got it. Okay, very good. John or Eileen?
So do you think that'll all be taken care of within 2 weeks, and we can just continue this to the next meeting?
Yeah, I can double check. I know he said that they have the landscaper scheduled for as soon as possible, so.
Okay, so I already conveyed by email the issues of the yard waste and the trampoline and
Behind
whatnot.
the
as
fence.
well as Right. So they're going to take care of all
Particularly near
that.
the wetland stuff, the stuff near the wetlands.
Yep.
Yeah, we saw some old fence materials and things.
There's, quite a bit of
Playground, yeah.
old
Trampoline-
stuff there.
Trampoline and everything, yeah.
So I'd recommend that you just continue this to the next meeting.
Yes. Typically, would you be, you think you would be recommending, even if they put the sod in, you're going to wait for it to be established, recommend holding the bond or anything like that?
Not if they sawed it, no.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so how about in 2 weeks?
Would it be possible just to close tonight on the basis that they'll do everything, they're willing to clean up everything? They're willing to have another site visit, if you'd
Still
like.
hold a bond until they do.
Your decision?
How much was the bond?
Good question.
The pool and patio is beautiful, by the way. Very nice for that property, yeah.
It's actually a little bit smaller than
And
we were
was it,
here.
and John, John, was it a cash bond or something that doesn't expire?
Oh, it would have been cash bond. It was only last year, so we switched. over.
$5,000.
What does the commission think? Is that sufficient to cover the remaining work?
How much area is being sodded?
So it's just the front right part of the yard. It's
I provided you
500
pictures.
square feet, maybe.
Basically a dumpster and its immediate surroundings in the front,
Just
that's about
leave
it.
It's under 1,000 square feet, probably.
Yeah, just leave it.
You okay?
Yeah.
All right, then I guess the commission seems to feel we'll have a motion, but seems to feel that we will issue the, no. We will issue the certificate, but hold the bond
Until,
until after it is sodded and the back is cleaned up.
Can you?
but do you want to vote on it, or do you want us to just hold it until we do an inspection?
Yeah, I
and
would
then
just
release it?
hold it. I wouldn't issue the certificate. I would.
It's whatever you guys want.
I think we should hold it.
Makes sense. Hold it.
I don't think that sets a good precedent.
No, I meant the bond. I was referring to the bond.
Oh.
So if you issued the certificate, would you want to vote yourselves again on the bond, or would you just give us the,
Now I see where you're going with this.
yeah.
How does the commission feel about that? Can we delegate this to our, releasing the bond after the work is done to our administrator?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Yep, okay.
They're inspecting it.
How do you feel about
That's fine.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Apparently we have a plan. Let's see if I can articulate it. Could I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for the project at 28 Alma Road?
So move.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, 600. Could I have a motion to release the bond upon satisfactory determination that the area behind the fence and the sod has been done at the discretion of our administrator?
So moved.
Further discussion? Does that sound,
Sounds great.
all in favor? All right.
Fantastic. Not that I don't like you.
I mean, we do like seeing you, but I understand we'd want to get this over with.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Have a good night. Okay, what do we have here? What is this? This is the project we just did? Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, next, we have for anybody watching at home, we have item 6 has been continued, 5 Susan Ave, and item 8, 328, 330 Cambridge Street has also been continued. So now we're on item 7, continued public hearing, notice of intent, 1 Elizabeth Ave, demolish a single-family dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling, DEP file number 122-624. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thomas Murphy here for the applicant who wasn't able to make it. As you may recall, we were before the commission a couple of weeks ago. The single-family house that's being knocked down, new one constructed. It was continued till tonight so that staff could go out and put a flag on the wetlands, which is on a neighboring property, to determine where the disturbed zone shows. So that's been done, and the plan has been revised accordingly, and that's what I believe is before you this evening. On the plan, it shows a shed to be removed towards the back left corner of the property. Once that is done, then the erosion control will be placed along the 20-foot line. Right now, it shows to be back at the property line, just so we can get in there and get the shed taken down. And the erosion control will be moved forward to the 20-foot line. They changed the elevations a little bit on the left-hand side. There was some concern raised last time that the flow might be going on the neighbor's property, so they revised that.
Right.
Get things headed, flowing down towards the back.
Yeah, there was concern the water was going to veer off to the left.
Exactly. Other than that, I think those are the only two significant changes that have been made to the plans. Last time we were in.
I see there's also the boulder row is on the new plan as well.
Yeah, he'll place those once the shed's out of there.
So let me see, there was a question about pointing out where mark a couple of points where the wetland was, so you can determine, has that been done?
Yep, John put flags.
All right, and you fix the grades on the left. Is there something about saving trees or something, some comment?
So there's the issue of the trees beyond within the 20-foot no disturb. It's not resolved at this point. So originally, I think they thought they could just clear, the erosion controls are back at the rear lot corner, and they thought they could just clear all the way back there. Now it turns out the wetlands are within the lot, and the 20-foot sort of incorporates a lot of those trees. So I'd recommend, even though they are non-native, that they not be clear-cut. There's no reason to cut them. They're in the no disturb area, so I'd recommend that they be left.
Okay. Are you okay with that? Okay. All right, so, is there anything further from the commission on this? John, anything, other issues?
No.
And there is nobody in the audience for it? And note that. All right, so could we review the draft decision?
Sure. Okay, so the findings, the work was the demolition of an existing single-family dwelling, construction of a new house, driveway, stone trenches, grading, utilities within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. The plan document references are updated to include the most recent plan dated 4/10. Standard findings about the wetland values. There's a notation about the distance, so that this dwelling is much closer to the wetland than the previous dwelling. So you'll note that the deck of the proposed building is actually within the no build, whereas the previous building was entirely outside at 76 feet. So you can decide whether or not that requires a waiver. The thing is, though, there is a shed that's in the no build. It's actually in the no disturb, which is being totally removed, and that area will then become revegetated. So stormwater management, it's obviously exempt as a single-family house, but they are proposing drip edge for both the roof and a stone trench on the left-hand side of the driveway to handle the runoff from the pavement. There's a discussion about the setbacks that I just sort of referred to. So basically, the commission is finding that the removal of the shed basically would not have any impacts it's in, the shed work is within the no disturb, obviously removing the shed is a positive, not a negative, even though it's work within the no disturb. That's it for the findings. The bylaw conditions include a proposed bond of $3,500, and a condition 5 in the bylaw conditions about the 20-foot no disturb being demarcated in some way. They're showing boulders on the plan, which is fine. They could also use fence, a hedge, or whatever. And then on to the order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act. Same plan references, all standard conditions for the administrative conditions. Pre-construction conditions are also standard conditions. Nothing unusual. Erosion control conditions. So we are requiring hay bales and silt fence. We're not going to accept wattles on this because of the amount of grading and also because of the closeness to the wetlands. Prohibition on stockpiling within 20 feet of the wetlands and the street. Standard conditions about sweeping. Standard condition about no additional grading beyond what's shown. Standard conditions about pollution control and refueling. So as I mentioned before, for stormwater management, there's trenches proposed, and there's a perpetual condition requiring that those be maintained in perpetuity. Buffer zone conditions, reiteration of what's in the bylaw decision about the demarcation, and that is also a condition in perpetuity. And then just adding to that, a notation that, or a condition that the area beyond the boundary be left naturally vegetated in perpetuity. Standard condition about, keeping the wetland cleaned of debris during construction. 48 is no filling without another filing, and then the standard conditions about achieving a certificate of compliance.
Okay. Any, Mr. Murphy, any questions on it?
Actually, I'm sorry, I should probably beef up or explain more the handling of the erosion control. So the fact that they're going to be relocated once the shed, I'll sort of beef that up. All right. Because the erosion controls as shown aren't what we want once the shed is removed. So I'll sort of beef that up.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right. I'd like to suggest to the commission that we do have a motion on the waiver explaining that the waiver for the deck being in the 40-foot no-build zone is, I don't know what the right word is, compensated by the fact that they're removing a shed which is in the 20-foot no-disturb zone. Okay, in other words, we should explain why we're granting a waiver. So I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
All right. Second? You have that down? Okay. All right. Any discussion on that? It's to grant a waiver. All in favor? 600?
I'm abstaining because I wasn't here for the,
501, then. Okay, 501. Then could we have a motion to issue the findings under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 as discussed and amended by comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Same vote. And then could I have a motion to adopt the order of conditions under Burlington Bylaw, Article 14, and the State Wetlands Protection Act?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote. And could I have a motion to require the posting of a $3,500 cash bond in the, under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for DEP file number 122-624.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote.
Could I note for the record that I was not at the last meeting, but I did watch the proceedings on BCAT, so that's why I wanted to vote. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Murphy, take care. Okay, so, that brings us to administrative things, planning, anything for the planning board that we need to write? No. All right. Subcommittee and staff reports. Anybody want to say anything?
We officially have a new conservation commissioner.
Yes, we will introduce him at the next meeting. He could not be here tonight. But Mr. John Ramsdell was appointed as a Conservation Commissioner by the Board of Selectmen at Monday night's meeting. We will officially welcome him when he shows.
Was he sworn in?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he's away.
All right, yeah, he's out of town, right. Okay, all right, also, as many people know, the commission has been leading the effort on the Community Preservation Act to bring information about the act, the exemptions, and the benefits that would derive to Burlington. We've been to all the major boards to discuss what the facts are. It is now at a point where we can only do so much, and it's time for us to turn that over to a citizens group, which looks like we'll be forming. If anyone is interested in participating in that, they should get in touch with the office, or the office can give them my email address, and they can get in touch with me, and they will be on the list. And if there's any meetings, if anyone in the community is interested in participating actively in promoting the Community Preservation Act, this would lead up to a ballot question in April of 2020 on our local election. So if anyone is interested in participating in that effort with a group of like-minded folks to vote yes on this, please get in touch with us. We'd love to add you to the list of the many folks who have expressed interest so far. Any comments on that? Nope. Okay. Okay, next is upcoming meetings. Our next meeting will be April 25th, and the next meeting after that, in 4 weeks, about that, will be on May 9th, 2019. Other business, anything else?
I have one thing I'd like to note. I would like to work with the Recreation Commission to have the scavenger hunt put in their summer bulletin if there's still time, so that we could get,
They're
oh, they're already putting it in.
it's probably too late for that,
It is,
because I know
okay.
that they work on that up to early March
Okay,
or mid-March. I think it's
It
kind
is,
of,
so it
it's
may not be out.
finalized, their
Okay.
programs. So, I mean, maybe they'll have room in their brochure, but
okay. Well,
worth a shot, it's worth
I'll
an ask.
try.
Worth
Yeah,
an ask.
Try, because if we can double the number, that would be good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not shooting too high either, so.
Anything else going on at all?
We're selling rain barrels,
Rain barrels, they have until
buy two.
some date in May to order them, I think.
Order by May 12th, I think it is,
May
and then
12th.
pick up on the 18th.
Right. And the rain barrels have diverters from the gutter to transition from the downspout into the rain barrel you can buy.
Yes.
And they also have pretty colored stones to sit on top if you want to make it like a decorative type feature, which is good. All right, and they come in 3 different colors as well. All right, anything else? Motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Anyone in favor? All right, good evening.